it's Brittany at Ink and Papyrus, and welcome back to my channel. There's just something so nice about a leather-bound book. It looks and it feels like leather, but what if I told you you could make one of these without any leather at all? I think a faux leather-bound journal would be the absolute best for an upcoming travel journal. And with a trip upcoming, I think it's about time that we make one together. So guys, this is a very simple process. We are creating the leather look with just a paper bag. If you have some brown paper packaging, that would work too. You want it to have a little thickness, okay? This process is super simple. You want to make sure you are grabbing a bag that doesn't have writing on one side, obviously. We're gonna cut this and flip this inside out. You want some hair conditioner, the cheaper the better. I've never used a pigmented like conditioner, but I don't really use this anymore, and it's sitting at the bottom of my bathroom cabinet, and so I decided to try. I'm gonna mix it up with a little bit of lotion this time too. You want some things to pigment your paper. Darker browns work amazing, neutral colors, maybe some greens, some grays, some blues, even some purples. And optionally, maybe something to add a little bit of pigment. I'm going to use this gold metallic paint to add a little bit of luster to my paper bag when I'm done. So first things first, we simply want to cut this apart so that we don't see this text anymore. I have to tell you guys, this is such a simple process. Make sure you're using a bag that's a little bit larger, and that way you will be able to create a cover for your leather-bound journal in one fell swoop. You won't have to glue any pages together or anything like that. Make it super easy. If you have a bunch of brown paper scraps left over and you want to make some other projects, I will link a video about like some really cool projects that you can do with that brown paper packaging above and in the description box. I'm telling you, this is the hardest part, really truly. All right, actually disassembling the bag, no sweat. Just cut along the lines. This will be disassembled in no time. In a previous video, I used brown paper packaging and brown paper bags to make some different crafts. And the beauty of that is I just used the natural kind of indentations and folded paper to make different things. If you're interested, if you want to stick around and just make a leather-bound book with me, which I hope you will, that's cool too. I'm just going to finish cutting this all apart and we will get started. Guys, this is a really fun process. It's super relaxing, and you'd be surprised at how leather-like this comes out. Like, they look so nice. They're perfect for Christmas if you're thinking about making somebody a journal for Christmas. Like a nice faux leather bound book, I'm telling you. Like, they look so nice. Alright, so I'm just going to disassemble this a little bit more and cut along some of these edges, well, to give us a clean straight edge, and then we'll be ready to go. So I've trimmed the edges to try and make them straight. Obviously we will be working with this part. Now, if your edges aren't perfect, which mine are not, it was a little hard to get this thing into the actual paper cutter, don't worry, because in order to make this into a book, you're either going to be wrapping this around like a fancy book cover like you did in school. You're going to wrap it around some chipboard bound book that you've created, or if you choose to do a softer cover, we are going to be lining the inside with some fabric pieces and sewing around. So that's going to reinforce this, and once we lay the fabric down, we'll get it all straight and nice and neat. Okay, so I hope that's reassuring to those of you that think, oh my gosh, like the edges are not straight, that's totally okay. Okay, so now this is the part that's really fun. And by the way, if you were wondering where I came up with this idea, I didn't. I think many years ago, Pam at the Paper Outpost had done a video tutorial on using a paper bag to create a faux leather journal. And this is a very similar technique that I stole from her. She's full of amazing ideas, but I haven't seen anyone do this in a while and I want to kind of put my own spin on it. So yes, she's an amazing channel. Of course, I'm sure you guys probably already know she's a legend. Okay, so this is the part that is super, super fun. Take your paper bag and scrunch it up. Now, how many times did you do this? I want you to do this until your hands hurt, until they're sore. This is going to work the leather bag. There is no cheating this process. It softens the faux leather and it's going to give it those amazing creases and dimples for when we ink this up. The crinkles in the paper are just going to soak up that ink so nicely. So you will know that it's good when it feels really soft, and then it'll be time to go into the next process. But I want you to do this until your fingers are sore, and literally just keep doing it again after that. And do this for several minutes. The more you do it, the more leathery your book is going to look. If your bag now looks like something like this, you've done it right, okay? Nice and weathered, and if you've done it right, you can tell that the paper bag feels noticeably softer than it did before it was all crinkled. Okay, next we are going to be accenting these creases with a bunch of inks and making this look weathered. So I recommend starting with your lightest colors first. Now you can get crazy with this, but I'm going to stick to a nice neutral palette. I'm going to start with some bundled sage and some weathered wood, and then from there I think I'm going to add forest moss, some black soot, and ground espresso. So now your bag should look something like this. Now here's the part where we come in with some conditioner. Now the cheaper the better, you know, it doesn't matter what kind you use, except I'm not really sure what kind of effect this is going to have. It may lighten the paper bag, it may not have any significant impact at all. I'm a little worried, but we're going to do this anyways. So what you want to do is just rub this all over, and you want to repeat the same process, the same scrunching process. And you want to make sure this whole bag is covered. That's what's going to give it that soft feel. Now, if some of the ink smudges or comes off, that's totally okay. That's normal. No worries. You just want to be careful because as it gets a little bit wet, it will be more likely to tear. I really like the crinkling that I can see and all the lines that it made with the ink. That is pretty cool. I've never used this with lotion before. I'm gonna try it. This is really old, and that's why I'm using this, and I'm kind of wondering if it'll give it a nice florally smell, which would be really nice. I'm not sure how it's gonna affect the drying process, the lotion. I imagine it'll probably be the same as with the conditioner. I'm not going to use too much though, in case it kind of screws stuff up. Okay, I feel like everything's pretty well saturated. I'm going to go in and create some more smushes. If some of your ink came off, remember you can always, go back over the cover with ink when it dries. You can re-scrunch it after it dries and get some more crinkles and then go over it with ink again. There's no reason why you can't, so don't worry about that. Okay, it's getting really soft. I feel like I should probably stop mucking around with it before it totally rips. I can tell this is going to be really cool. Now, there were some bags or some lines in the paper bag where the handles were and some extra paper. I opted to go ahead, some of it was like peeling up. I opted to glue it down with a glue stick, and when it's dry I'll probably have to go over it again under it with a glue stick. That's okay. It's supposed to be worn leather, so it's not going to be perfect. You can see, even with the conditioner and the lotion, you can see the areas of highlights with the lighter inks that I used, the bundled sage and the weathered wood. I have to say, I think I was too aggressive about just going down and stamping it. Like, you can clearly see like the lines that look like the stamp pad here. I might go over parts of this with some darker inks once it's dry, and I can crinkle it up again to hide those. But otherwise, I'm really happy with the way this is looking. I really think going over it with some light and dark ink really adds to the effect. And what I think I'm gonna, obviously this is not even. It's hard to cut even lines when it's all crinkly. It's not until it's kind of flat now that you can see how uneven these lines are. When it's dry, I'm probably going to send it through my paper cutter again to get some nice straight lines. If it's longer than you intend, that's totally good, because if you are using this to cover an already bound journal, like a chipboard journal, you're probably going to want to, well, you can either glue it straight on, or you may want to come over it and fold the edges like that, and then bind the, like, put fabric on the inside. Or what I'm thinking I'm going to do is, because I really like the feel of the soft cover, I'm going to put fabric in here, but I still want a wider spine. So I'm going to probably line the spine with either some fabric or some additional paper or something firm. And I'm going to want a spine, if I'm using this as a travel journal, I'm probably going to want a spine about yay wide. So once you account for the spine, like, this isn't nearly as big as you think it's going to be, and we can always take inches off, we can't add them. So I would recommend letting this dry, and then we'll play around with trimming and stuff a little bit later. Just let it dry for now. I may expedite the drying process with a hairdryer. I'm not sure how that will affect the crinkling. You may be better off, if I remember correctly, the last time I did this, I just let them air dry. It's obviously probably going to take several hours to overnight, but you may get better effects that way. I don't know, I'll play around with it and I'll let you know. I forgot, I wanted to add a little bit of gold luster, so that's what I'm doing now. I'm only adding the slightest little bit, and I'm actually applying it with the little cap, the little seal that came on, because I want so little. You don't want this to look too put on or manufactured. So once you put just the littlest bit of luster, and I don't think you should cover the whole thing, I think you should just go in little places. See, I think that's too much actually. And maybe dab it as opposed to completely smushing it in. And that's just enough to, like, accent it and give it some beautiful highlights. And I'm going to do the other side just like this as well. Okay, so things are finally dry. I knew I said I would be drying this with a hairdryer, but I actually got occupied, and I wasn't going to be able to finish the cover anyway, so I just let it air dry. And honestly, I would probably recommend doing the same. I don't know how the conditioner would respond to the heat. I mean, I guess I'm sure it would be fine drying it. I'm gonna do another one of these in the future and test it out with a hairdryer, and I can tell you guys my results. But I would just want to make sure that it doesn't make the paper bag stiffer, I guess. I don't know why it would. I guess that wouldn't really make sense. That would be my only other thing, because you really want the soft, pliable feel of the leather. I think now that it's dry, so there's this kind of, I'm filming here with my phone. There's a little bit of a, not a filter, but you just can't really see. I feel like you miss out on the complexity via the filter on the phone and the camera. I don't know. It kind of looks more fake and artificial, I guess, via the camera. But when you look at it, honestly, it looks even better in person is what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to spit out. So let's get to going on making this cover. I'm going to show you the two options you have for actually creating this or transforming this into a journal. I'm going to show you the first option, and that is going around a hard cover chipboard journal that you have already created. Now I'm going to show you just kind of the concept first. This is not actually what I'm going to do. All right, so if you have a chipboard journal, which this is the Harvest Moon journal we created, the more I look at this, the more I love it. Okay, so what you would do is lay your chipboard out. Oops. Lay your chipboard out, And I would recommend doing this in 3 sections, just like you would bind a hardcover journal. Maybe? No, I lied. I think if you were to do it this way, see, whenever I make these, I always make soft cover journals, which I will show you in just a second. I would recommend getting a large piece of, you know, making sure you have plenty of paper bag. And I would recommend gluing this, like just applying glue all over the journal, okay? All over. And then what I would recommend doing is being very diligent, because remember you have all these creases and crinkles. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult to seat this on something flush, but you could totally do it. And what I'm looking for right now is my bone folder, which you guys know what that is. I am failing to find it right this second, but anyways, what I would recommend doing is pretend this is your bone folder. I'd recommend going over it very diligently, and those creases where the spine meets the front cover and where the spine meets the back cover, make sure you get in there really nice with the bone folder, so you still, it doesn't look like just a crappy attempt to cover something, and that way you're kind of like meeting, you'll still have the natural grooves and creases. Now I will tell you that you have to be careful with this process, because the paper bag is very soft and pliable, and it's a lot more fragile at this point and likely to rip, okay? So go along with your bone folder and make sure you get in all those really nice creases, and you will still end up with something, like you shouldn't be able to tell that that's a cover. And then once your cover is covered, you're going to flip it over. And personally, what I would do is come along here. Okay. Obviously you have to do this before you bind your pages in. But what I would do is trim this, and I would apply more glue here and fold over the edges like this, just like you're wrapping a book, okay? Fold them over, fold them over. Obviously a lot more carefully, do a much better job than that. Fold them over. Okay, and then what you want to do is on the inside, what I would do is, so that you don't see the paper bag edges, so once you have this down and everything folded over, I would take 2 pieces of fabric and line the inside cover, so you'll only have a little bit of paper bag edge, and then you'll have fabric over top. So you won't see that the book is lined, right? It'll just look like it's all paper bag, and then you'll have the fabric over top, okay? So like, let's pretend this is our paper bag. You'll cut this to size, this being the fabric, and then you'll lay the fabric over here, and I promise you it will look really nice. Make sure you fold your edges over first before you apply the fabric, okay? Because if you apply the fabric and the inside cover and then fold these over, you're gonna have all these awkward paper bag lines. I hope that makes sense. That is your first option if you want a hard cover journal. I want to show you how to make a soft cover leather, faux leather journal. We're going to use the same concept of lining the inside with fabric, and we can also use the excess paper bag pieces we have left over to reinforce especially the spine and give this a little bit more of a sturdier feel. Okay, so this may seem a bit fancy, but this is a travel journal, and I am taking this to Italy with me, and so I'm kind of going for the fancy sort of royal look. This is actually, I think, a table runner that I got at a yard sale. So I'm definitely gonna have to chop this up a bit, and maybe we'll even use this to create the closure, or use this as the tassel on the journal spine to make this really, really fancy. Haven't decided yet. Before you know the size of the fabric to cut, however, oh, and I should mention, like, you need to make sure your fabric is sturdy. It doesn't have to be this crazy, right? But you don't want like the prettier kind of, like, I was looking at a couple of old shirts that I have in my fabric drawer that are very light. Like, you want something cotton based because that's going to help provide some sturdiness and reinforce this. So you don't want fragile fabrics. They need to be kind of like, I think cotton and upholstery is a good place to start. Okay, so in order to figure out how large the fabric squares need to be, we need to cut this down and figure out what is what here. So remember, measure twice, cut once, and you can always trim some off the edges, but you can't add back to your paper bag. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so first what I would do is figure out how wide you want your spine to be. Okay, so use the natural creases of the paper bag. I think this is kind of where we'll definitely have the spine be here. Okay, so I'm going to use this crease here. And what if we do, let's say we want a, we'll start here. And let's say we want a, I don't know. Question is am I going to want to use this for more than one trip? I'm not sure. Maybe. And, you know, I always use up more room than I think I'm going to, especially because I'll be bringing home mementos and pictures. So I'm just trying to take that into account. What if we do a, let's say we do a 3.5 inch spine. Maybe I'll put multiple trips in here. Well, I'm not sure. Okay, let's just commit to doing the 3.5 inch spine. Make another mark. 3.5. 3.5. All right. I'm gonna draw a line down here. Now, I'm going to use this to reinforce my spine. Okay. Make sure it still hinges easily. Okay. So leave a little wiggle room, right? You're not going to want to bring it to the very, very edge or else it's not going to hinge. Alright, so make it just slightly shorter than the actual spine. Right there. And we went there. So I'm going to say, actually, it's probably perfect where the fold is already. Alright. Where my scissors go. So now I've cut 3 pieces of paper in order to fit the spine area that I've laid out What I did was just use the scraps that I had left over of the paper bag. I'm going to smush these together. I could glue them, but I think I'm going to sew them. And then I'm going to attach them to the journal right here. If you want to decorate the spine, you can do that now. I think I'm just going to leave this a brown color. Obviously, make sure the writing is all covered. And then don't glue this down once you have your spine all put together. I'm choosing to use 3 different pages because I want a little bit of stiffness to it. If you want a hidden spine, make sure you bind your pages in first and then glue this. If you glue this down without binding your pages, it's going to be an exposed spine, meaning you will be able to see the cording coming out the back. So I sewed my spine up and this is how it looks. Now I have it how I wanted. I did ink around the edges a little bit. If you want to and leave this paper bag look, the other thing you can do to make it a little bit more interesting for whatever ends up peeking through is just stenciling and just taking like your ink dauber and like actually inking around the stencil. That could be cute. I'm just going to leave this how it is for now. Make sure that your spine fits in between the boundaries that you've laid out. I'm going to get to cutting this. We're going to do a little bit of measurements to make sure that, well, we're going to get this down to size and then we should be good. This is going to take a bit of deconstruction. Obviously, I got to get rid of all this rope and at least cut some squares and then we will get it to size. So I deconstructed that table runner and I have 2 pieces of fabric for the inside. As I was thinking about how I was going to trim this down to size and get both the front and the back cover equal size, because again, it's kind of distorted, it's hard to cut things to size. And I was also thinking, well, what about this? Like, obviously this is not sturdy in between the fabric. I need something to make this more sturdy and something to use so that I can fold the residual paper bag over onto itself. And I thought, how perfect if I just take some paper that's already cut to size 8.5 by 11. I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. I think it's like the other ones that I made were really small, the other journals, and so I just folded the paper bag onto itself, I think. Or maybe I did cut some paper to size. Anyways, these are already 8.5 by 11, so they are perfect. And I'm just going to take 2 pieces I don't think that I would use otherwise, though I actually think this unicorn paper is pretty cute. This is going to be hard to use because it's like a full-size page with text on it. And I'm going to take one of, maybe we'll make a unicorn journal at some point. Oh, I do love the unicorns actually. They're probably the letters. Okay. So now I have 2 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. And what I'm going to do, alright, so first of all, I'm going to cut these down ever so slightly, but I'm going to do them both at once with my paper cutter so that I make sure they're the exact same size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this secured on here, trim it a little bit. So what I'm going to place these slightly from the center, because what we're going to do is we're going to cut another piece of fabric on the back and we're going to put it where the spine would be. So I am going to have a little bit over top the back where the spine will be to reinforce it. I think this part is optional. But now I feel like this will be much easier because now we don't have to measure or try to cut a wrinkly paper bag to size, which is going to be darn near impossible. All we have to do is fold the paper bag over onto these pages and then place the fabric over top. I want you to position this a little ways from the spine. Okay, because you got to make sure it's going to hinge, right? Okay, and what we're going to do, you're going to say, oh, how do I know that it's equidistant? Well, what we can do is, okay, we say, okay, there is about a little over 1 millimeter from here to here. So we're going to say we can make it exact to be precise. All right, so we have 1 millimeter from here to here to the beginning of the spine. And that's exactly where we're going to put our page, about 1 millimeter from the spine. And then we're going to say from here to here is 1 millimeter. Then we know exactly how far that is. Perfect. And then we'll say we're going to start our paper, or remember to leave enough room, right, so you can fold that down. We're going to start this, we'll say that's exactly 2.5 millimeters from the top. Okay, and we'll say 2.5 millimeters from the top would be right there. Is that right? Now all we're doing is gluing these panels down. You could do this with a glue stick. I'm gonna I am gonna sew over this so it doesn't have to be too crazy. You do want to make sure it's flush with the paper bag as good as you can get it. So just gluing these panels down. It's been a while since I made one of these. That's why I'm having to kind of go back and like refresh my memory about the process of reinforcing this. Let's cut a little bit of the excess. Make sure you leave yourself plenty, right? Because we're going to be folding this over and covering the excess with the fabric anyways. If you don't leave yourself enough of a margin, you're going to be really sad. Set this aside. Now comes the foldy parts. Okay. I'm going to fold right over on that crease, but still be gentle with it. Okay, I can see like this is going to come together really nicely. And obviously this will be reinforced with, at least I'm going to sew mine, you don't have to sew yours. The fabric that I'm using is really thick, so it would be really hard to glue it down. You totally could, especially with like a silicone glue. But I just think it makes for a really, it's part of the look, you know? Okay, now for this side. So I'm going to do one at a time. I'm going to fold the side. I think it's helpful to get some of the glue on the paper bag and then some of the glue onto the paper that you're folding it onto. I didn't know why I didn't think of that earlier, but that's such an easier way to try and get the front cover and the back cover to be the same size without having to cut it down a million times. Is just take a pre-measured piece of paper and use that as your template to fold the paper bag over. Okay. Okay. All right, next we are going to fold the top. You can fold the top over onto itself. All right, this is difficult because this is, you see this part hanging up? This is where the handles were. So it's like really thick. So it's gonna be hard. Oof. Boy, if not damn near impossible. Well, I'm going to bypass this entirely. I'm going to cut out this little handle part. Because I can't fold this over. It won't move. Okay, and the other side doesn't have a handle on it, so see, it's even hard to cut through. Right? Oh, but the other side does have handles on it. Oh, darn it. Darn it! Well, what shall we do? What we can do, I'm going to, see, these are things you don't think about until you're in the thick of it, literally. I'm going to cut into this. Now, of course, that part of the paper bag underneath is not decorated, but that is okay. What we can do, I'm just going to put one of those other little pieces over top, and I think it will be totally fine. Do I have the same problem on this side? No, not really. Okay, so now we can kind of fold this over top. Make sure you bring the paper bag in with you. Bring all the sides in. Good, good, good. Do you see how this is coming together? It's coming together really nicely. See that? This is gonna look really, really nice. Okay. Now we're going to fold up the bottom, and then we should be good to get the fabric on. Now that I have everything folded up, I did have to adjust the length of the spine. That's totally fine. I just cut it off since my book ended up being shorter, and re-sewed, re-inked, not a big deal. Make sure that before we move on to the next step, make sure your fabric fits within the lengths of the diameters you have set. You want to make sure your book hinges well back and forth. It's not going to if fabric is overlying between here and where your book hinges. Okay? I took the option of punching holes in here because I'm going to put fabric on the back of the cover to reinforce it, and it's going to be really hard to punch holes through the fabric when you go to bind your book. So I punched holes in here ahead of time. I'm not sure if I'm going to make this an exposed spine or not, but at least if I already have the holes set, I will just be able to go through the fabric on the back with a needle through the existing hole if I want to do an exposed spine. Otherwise, I can bind my pages in to the spine that I have set and then just glue this directly into the journal. Now what I'm going to do is go around this and sew all around the fabric. Now you want to be really careful because obviously if you do that, you will have sewing on the outside, so just make sure your sewing machine is in good working order. You don't want to mess this up. I probably will clip the fabric with some clips before I send it through to make sure it's nice and even. And go like this and mute it a little bit. There we go. So it still kind of fits in with the theme, and you can do this with any text that you may have showing through that you thought wasn't going to show through. It's not a big deal at all. Yeah, we'll do that. And then I'm going to send this through my sewing machine and get the fabric attached to the panels. So I have my panels sewed in and I absolutely adore the way this looks. Now, I have to tell you, I recommend doing a test run for the stitches you're going to use, because if you mess it up, you're going to hate yourself. And I guess there's always a fix, but it'd be really complicated. You can use your excess paperback scraps to go over if you really like, if you have nesting or anything like that, and then sew over it again, but it's really a pain. So definitely test the stitching, stitch length, make sure it goes through your fabric smooth, and do all that and get all that squared away before you start sewing. Also, clips are so underrated for holding things in place, because when you have something this large, what can happen is the fabric can kind of bunch up a little bit and you don't realize it until you've sewn it shut and then you have bunching. This is a great way to keep the fabric in place until you're ready to completely sew around the whole thing and continue to like smooth it out as you're sending it through the machine to make sure everything is nice and flush against your cover. Okay, I was planning on the last piece of fabric, the last piece of major construction we have to do is to reinforce the spine. I was planning on using this, but I found this velvety thing. This obviously came holding a product that I bought. I don't know which one, but I was thinking like, how pretty would this green velvety fabric look? It matches some of the inking that I did, and so I decided I'm gonna cut this apart and use this. Maybe I'll even use this in the closure to really tie everything together, but this is like the perfect size. So I'm gonna deconstruct this. When you're cutting your fabric, it's totally fine. Like, definitely, you see where it hinges? You want it to cover that entire area. Okay, don't be afraid to like cover the entire spine. It'll hinge fine with the fabric over top, and in fact it's what will prevent this from fraying where the book hinges back and forth. So make sure whatever fabric you cut, you cover where the book hinges in the front and in the back. Okay, so I sewed that green fabric over the spine and this is what we have. Now, the red may be a little bit bold, the red stitches, but I have to say I really, really, really like this. And it feels so, like, rich, the velvet. I don't know, I have to tell you that, okay, so this here is going to be, I am going to bind the pages in first, I decided, so that I don't have to poke holes in the velvet. So once I bind the pages in, this is going to sit like this, and you can see there's plenty of room for this to hinge back and forth. I decided to just do that after the cover is all done. This really does, I don't know how it looks on camera or if there's enough that you can see. I don't know, like it really has that really nice faux leather. Like it has a nice leather look to it. And it is so like soft. I think this is like, if for all of you guys that love like different textures, you're gonna love this. So I also added the book corners, which I felt like was important because, you know, I could see it. It still is thin, so I could see the corners easily getting, you know, bent or mangled. So that was perfect. I was thinking about adding gold, but I ended up with these instead, and I really like the design on them. And overall, I'm just thrilled with this. So I think what I did cut a little seal in here purposefully because there's some wrinkling and I'm kind of worried about how the spine is going to sit. So I think I might remove just a little bit of this paper bag so that the spine sits really nice and neat in it. But aside from that, I feel like it's perfect. I wouldn't change anything. This is going to be such an amazing travel journal. The only other addition I wanted to add for completeness sake was I wanted to create a little closure and maybe a tassel onto this. I want to just spend our last few minutes together showing you a couple of ideas for closures and just kind of talking it through. So first and foremost, I'm going to take this and we are going to, I think I want this button to be the thing that the closure like wraps around. So in order to do that, I need to put some cording through here. So I'm going to make a hole here. You could set an eyelet, but I don't want anything that's gonna like, I want to just put the cording through here directly. So I am going to avoid doing that for right now. In other journals I've set eyelets, but again, that's if I'm wrapping like thread through here directly. If I'm setting an eyelet, I don't want it the eyelet like pushing up against the button, if that makes sense. I think I'm just gonna go with this brown cording. I'm gonna put this through here. Now it's important that you be very deliberate about getting this nice and snug against the cover so that it doesn't pop off. I'm just gonna go like this. You also don't want huge knots or else it'll be kind of tacky. Oh, well, did it go all the way through? Having the fabric there may make things a little bit more difficult. Okay, so that's good, just like that. I actually really like that. So I'm gonna put this like this, and we're gonna go, I'm gonna lay down a knot, but I'm gonna be obsessed with getting the little ears even. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it'll stay. Okay, so now we have a cute little bow inside, which you can always cut the ends off if you decide you don't like it later. Okay, cute. And I think for the closure, I want to braid together a couple of things. So this is what I have left over from that velvet bag. I think I might want to use the string here because this is such a cute little design. So remember, the actual closure itself is going to wrap around the button, and that's how it's going to actually close the journal. So maybe we'll secure it like that. Make sure you can put tension on there and it stays. Okay, so I think I might braid this green amongst some other like laces and some other lovely things, and then attached some jump rings to the whatever I use to attach this, because obviously this is going to be too thick. So what you want to do is add, you can use jump rings or you can use some thinner cording, but that would be a way to secure little charms to the closure and them to like hang down as you wrap the closure around the journal. So I want to tie all of this together, like the inside cover and the charms and the spine. So what I did was I cut a bunch of excess pieces I had left over, and I think what I'm going to do is arrange these in a way. They're obviously like too thick to braid. So what I'm going to do is arrange these together. I found these at the thrift store and they've been sitting in my drawer forever. But I think they're beautiful. I'll probably add some little bits of lace too, and I'm going to sew this. And then what I'm going to do is once I sew these pieces together, I'm going to sew this, or I'm going to put this through like this piece of lace here and tie a knot. You want something thin at the ends so that you can wrap it around and act as a closure. And then I'll probably come in with the safety pins and add some of these charms along the thicker pieces of fabric. I think that's my plan. So I am absolutely thrilled with this closure. So I know this might look complicated, but really I just put these together piecemeal and sewed them together. So I just took layers of the fabric and lace and ran them through my sewing machine a couple of different times. I stitched, like I lined them up and then stitched them vertically like that until they were long enough. I gave myself extra because I know that this journal is going to bulk up. And then I went ahead and the cording, okay, obviously this is too thick to wrap around the button. So I attached some cording to this, and the way I did it was I went around this beaded piece right here, because obviously you can't sew this. And so I put a piece of lace over, so I tied a knot around the beads and then left some extra cording because this is going to be the part that goes around the closure. And what I did was, after I tied the cording to this beaded piece, I put some lace over all the fabric and the cording and sewed them together. So I know it looks complex, but really I kind of just started sewing things together, like sewing the pieces together that could be sewed and adding on as I went. And I like making my closures this way. I know they seem a little, maybe a little extra, but I love it. And then I knotted a key here, and my thought process was I will go around the button like this, and then the back of the closure here, see there's cording coming off of both ends, and then I am going to tuck it like that and go around. Now eventually when the journal bulks up, there won't be any of this excess here, and so I think it will look even better. Like what you can do is like kind of tuck this in real tight and then wrap it around like that, maybe tie a bow. And this to me looks absolutely fabulous. It looks so vintagey. The velvet is amazing. The faux leather feels so good. And I am so proud of this. I am going to bring this to Italy with me, and obviously once I bind together pages, I will simply glue the spine to the middle. But I am so proud of this. This faux leather, honestly, this is such an underrated journal cover in my book. It was very, very easy. It was very forgiving. like creases, wrinkles, oh, like whatever, it adds to the character. And there are so many different ways that you can style this. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you are making a faux leather journal of your own. These are so fabulous. And again, I think this makes for the perfect travel journal, which is how I will be using mine. So guys, if you enjoyed this and want to see more of ink and papyrus, including my adventures in Italy, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you the next time.